right, everybody, class is in session, so pay attention. So here we are, my first day in school. Now, normally, I'm a martial arts instructor. Normally, I'm a judge on Fortune Fire. Today, I am a student. We are a student because you're joining me on this journey to be a knife sharpening expert. And for that, we have Tomas as our professor or teacher for the day. Tomas,
I'm
welcome.
happy you're here. Absolutely.
We got here.
This is your first day at school, which is crazy because you are a mentor to me. I've been training with you, admiring you. And now I'm teaching you and the audience at home how to sharpen with the wicked edge. Let's cut into it.
So as an instructor or student that I am today, I want to know, what's this all about? What is sharpness?
It's important to understand the what before the why and the how, right? So what is sharpness? Every knife that you have to sharpen. It will eventually dull no matter what it is, whatever super steel. Anytime you use it, you're dulling it, right? Sharpness is basically taking that edge and making it as thin as possible or as sharp as possible. But there's also different levels of sharpness. For example, you have a straight razor for shaving and very fine tasks. You're not going to take a straight razor and go try to chop down a tree, right? It's going to break. It's not going to do the job. You have an axe that has more robust strength to it, but it's not necessarily as sharp. So the first thing that we're going to understand is, what tool are we sharpening?
All right, so that's good. So now we know what sharpness is. Sharpness is about cutting. You have to have that edge that you can run the edge to be able to cut something, and also puncture depending on the angle when you're puncturing into something. So that's what sharpness is. Now, my next question as we go through this process: why do I need to sharpen a knife? Don't they always come sharpened anyways?
That's a great question. Usually from the factory, depending on the level, it's done by a machine and there's a lot of imperfections. Or if you're getting a custom blade, it could be, but you want to maintain it. So why do you need to sharpen? Well, safety, right? A sharp knife is a safe knife. And I've learned that from scouts, right? A dull knife is dangerous, a sharp knife is safe.
And the reason for that is because when it's dull, right, you have to put more work into it, and it could affect your accuracy, your control of the weapon, or control of the knife. It affects it when you're trying to do more with it than you're supposed to.
And I'm sure you've seen that and experienced that on the show, doing not only the kill test, but also the sharpness test. You have to put in more effort and it became very dangerous.
Yes.
Sharp knives are safer. The other thing is that it can increase your efficiency as a tool, right? Depending on your job. Maybe you're a chef, you're slicing through sashimi. Maybe you're a first responder and you need to make sure that you cut that seatbelt in one stroke to get a rescue. There's a lot of factors in play, but it will increase your efficiency depending on the task, including personal protection.
Yeah. Now, what about blades and edges? Now, this is from me working on the show on Fortune Fire and understanding sharpness, right? I know that blades and edges are perishable, meaning after you cut with it, if you look at a microscope, you'll realize that every use of it will dull your edge.
True, absolutely. And that needs to be maintained. But there's also a ton of different ways that you can sharpen a blade, because it's one of the oldest things that we've been doing as humans, right? We've been sharpening on stones and rocks for a long time, but that takes a long time to master, right? There's a lot of variables at play, and there's a lot of ways that you can sharpen that we'll talk about here in a minute.
All right, so we know what sharpness is. It's about cutting. We know why we need to sharpen, which is, once again, for safety reasons, for accuracy use of the thing. At the same time, we know it's a perishable thing, right? The more you use it, the more it's going to dull.
Yes.
My next question is, how do you sharpen knives?
Absolutely. There are a ton of ways to do it. Everyone has their own way. But if we break it down into some few basics, and we can compare it to martial arts. You have a stone, right? Probably one of the most oldest ways to sharpen. Something that is harder than the steel that you're sharpening.
Harder than the steel. Got it.
Typically, that can be a rock or a specific, like an Arkansas stone, or it can also be a diamond stone, right? Or Sharpen glass. Now, what I like about the Wicked Edge is that they use monocrystalline diamond stones that are super hard, which saves you time.
All right, monocrystalline diamond stones, a little ahead of time. I'm still learning the alphabet here. But it's got to be harder than the metal to be able to sharpen it, right? Yes. So the way I've seen sharpening done is tradition throughout history. They've been using stones. Now, that could be very meditative. It's fun. It's easy to have available. But I also know you need to know what you're doing.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of mastery, a lot of muscle memory, because as you're also sharpening, you can also ruin the edge if you don't know how to sharpen. So it requires skill. You require the variables we're talking about, which are what?
You need a strong base, right? You need to have movement and you need an angle. And those are basically the three things for sharpening: the base, the angle, and movement.
The sharpening things that we have through history, you have the stones that can give you all that. So you've got movement, the base, and just how to get that right angle. But we also have belt grinders that we use on the show. And I know this about belt grinders. It is powerful because the belt grinders to me are the tough martial arts that are out there, the ground and pound. You have mixed martial arts, kickboxing, wrestling, judo, all these things that if you don't know what you're doing, you can get hurt.
Exactly.
And the same thing now with the belt grinders, if you don't know what you're doing, you can hurt your knife and your edge. I've seen it when I felt it myself. The heat can take away the temper of the blade. But the pros is it takes a lot of metal quick.
Yes.
But it also takes a lot of mastery to be able to know what you're doing. If you remove too much. I mean, I started out grinding a knife this way. When I was done, I had a pocket knife.
Exactly. You can't add on steel. You can only remove it. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah. And that's one of the things why I found it very intimidating in my way of trying to learn how to do things, is that when it's mechanical, it takes too much time. Then I have to take time to perfect something and all this. Sometimes it's very intimidating if I don't know what's going on. Now, you found an easy way to do that, right? So we have the stones, we have the belt grinders,
Machines.
And now what do we have here?
We have a hybrid, is essentially what I like to call it. This is what I would consider the Kali of martial arts. Why? Because in Kali, we're using tools. We use a weapon or a tool to increase your survival rates. Well, we're using a tool to increase the efficiency of sharpening. The Wicked Edge 40 eliminates those variables that we talked about. The movement of the blade, the angle at which you're sharpening, and also a secure base. You need those three to be consistent to ensure you have a strong edge.
So those are the three variables we're talking about, right? A base for consistency, holds it in place. The movement to get the angle that you're doing and the proper pressure so that you don't overgrind one area, you want to be even.
Exactly.
Right?
So talking about those three variables, the Wicked Edge eliminates all of those to ensure you have consistent strokes every time. We have a strong, durable base that you can clamp on, or we're going to affix it to a base plate. We have locking angle selections from 13 degrees for a very fine edge to 31 degrees for a very thick edge. We talked about that movement. This has guide rods. It literally self-guides you, doing the work for you. We also have a secure clamp here for your blade to ensure that there is no movement, allowing every stroke to be perfect, honing your edge to razor sharpness.
So I know what this is, but what is it not? I'm used to the belt grinders, those powerful things.
For sure.
Can that also work as well as the belt grinder?
I would say that this is great for any blade that has a primary edge or touching up blades that have already had an edge.
For example,
Yeah.
we'll use this as an example, right? This is basically a trainer. It's a knife blank, meaning that we have the form of a blade, but look, it's very thick on its edge right here, right? If I use this on the Wicked Edge, can you sharpen the edge over here?
I'm sure you could, but it's going to take a long time. You're also going to eat through your stones. So I would say this is not meant for heavy duty reprofiling of a blade profile, meaning those bevels and all that. For the edge, absolutely. This is going to be great at maintaining your tools and ensuring that you can keep them sharp.
And I bring that up because it's important to realize that this has its limitations just like belt grinders have theirs, right?
Of course.
Belt grinders are great for quick removal, but once you have the bevels in there and you start to maintain the edge, this is the easy answer. I don't need to put the belts on. I don't have to worry about heat.
Exactly.
And it's also because it's so easy because all those variables you're talking about, pressure, I have to have certain pressure to be even all the time. And then we talk about the angles, right? This already has the knobs over here so that I can choose the right angle for each side perfectly.
Perfect.
So it's symmetric. And then we also have the movement, easy enough movement. So it's almost like, I don't know, very user-friendly.
It's like bowling with the lanes up.
We got bumper bowling, right? So it makes everything easy.
Easier. Let's teach you how to actually use it.
All right, so normally if I were to use the belt grinders, which I did a couple of times that I forged, I realized that I got to put a lot of time in, a lot of years in repetition to get that muscle memory to do a good job. Now, that intimidated me because I'm a busy person. Let's see if this can allow me to actually be efficient in a short amount of time.
All right, what we have here is a standard chef's knife. This is a Japanese steel, so we're giving you a little bit of a challenge because you're an advanced beginner. We have a high carbon steel blade, ZDP 189 steel, but before we test it, we also like to ensure that we know it's dull. So how can you test for sharpness? I usually like to use a piece of paper. It does a great job at giving you feedback on the edge. You can also see if it bites into your thumbnail, and if it slides off, it's not sharp. If you're worried about that, you can also use a Sharpie. If it's not biting onto the Sharpie, pretty dull.
By bite means digging in.
Yeah, if it digs in, like we have a sharp knife here, the second I touch it to the Sharpie, it bites and it sticks to that blade right there. So that's a sharp blade. Now we're gonna teach you how to sharpen using this blade.
So what we have here is your typical blade that everybody probably has. You have some kind of kitchen tool or your pocket knives or anything else. So it comes already with a pre-ground bevel. It's got the shape and profile and everything else. Now, I know we've been using this. And that's one thing we know. Why do you need to sharpen your knife? Because in its use, it will dull. Well, is it dull? We'll find out. So here's our test with a cutting knife. Does it bite in? Okay. And if you see the way I'm cutting at an angle, I'm also running the edge, right? Just so that you know, we made sure, there you go. Sometimes there's one spot it cuts in. I'll go straight with another piece of paper here. Okay, not a nice cut. Run the edge. So it's not biting in. So it was sharp because there's some areas I can tell that dig in, there's some areas that don't. So we know which edges have been used. What's next?
Now we're gonna use the Wicked Edge 40 to sharpen this blade. And I specifically chose the Wicked Edge 40 because it is the most affordable model that Wicked Edge has ever come out with. Typically they have the $800 to $1,000 to $1,500 sharpeners, but the best thing is that you can get the same edges on those models with this.
And that's what I love also. When I'm getting into something, cost is very important to me, right? I'm not an expert at it. I'm trying it out. Oh, $1,500 professional grade. Oh, it goes down to $1,200 and $1,000, and it's a lot of money for me. But at that price point that you're going in,
$185.
and I can actually feel like I'm an expert, we'll find out.
We'll find out. First off, we're gonna clamp this to a base. Now you can use the clamp or you can use the base that Wicked Edge has on their website. We're gonna screw it in and then we're gonna clamp it and find your angle.
Okay, so what's that thing that's holding onto the spine?
I always recommend that you add a shim. You can either do it with tape or Wicked Edge also has the shims that you can get. It's just a paper shim. It protects the coating of it. All right, Doug, we got it mounted into the vise. Now here's the thing. This is a crash course just to get you started on the sharpening process. So we're gonna quickly go over how to find your angle. And for that, the secret is a Sharpie.
All right.
What you do is you take a Sharpie marker and you basically just coat that fine edge. What this does is it gives you visual feedback of where you're hitting to find out where that apex is, so you can line it up perfectly. So I just simply run this across the edge. Included with the Wicked Edge 40 are two sharpening stones. We have a 200 and a 600. And what that means is we have a coarse grit and a fine grit.
So a coarse grit, being coarse, removes more material.
It's going to be much faster, and it's the lower number. So 200 in this case is going to have a very aggressive texture. The 600 is going to give you more of a polished, refined edge,
right?
And that's because it is a higher number.
So you want the coarse side because it removes more material, and you want the more polished side to polish the edge.
Exactly.
Right?
And not only for polishing, but let's say I want to resharpen this blade. The 600 is going to be great at just touching it up because I already know the angle that my blade's going to be sharpened at. It makes it really fast for touch-up sharpening. So we're going to mount these over the guide rods, and kind of like what we talked about earlier with those variables, this gives you everything that you need to ensure that it is consistent. We have the base, we have the guide rods for the movement, and we have the angle selectors to lock in your angle. All right, so now that we have everything set up, I like to grip the stones at the very bottom. Now, why is that? If I grip up at the top, I am pushing, and that's not really great. What I want to do is make sure I don't roll that tip. I've seen a lot of people, they end up ruining the tip of their blade because they're adding too much pressure.
Putting the pressure into the sides, right?
You're letting the stones do the work for you. So I grip at the bottom, and the motion is starting at the base and gently pushing forward. And what that does is it relieves pressure off of the tip, ensuring that it stays true and perfect. So Doug, as you can see, as I take this 200 stone and I wipe it across the blade, you can see on this side where it's removing that material of the Sharpie, telling me that I'm hitting the apex true and perfect.
Nice.
Now what I'm gonna look for is what we call a burr. And what that means is I hit the apex, but on one side it is overly gone over it, right? Meaning that the edges are true together. On the other side, I will knock off that burr to make sure that I can start forming the apex. You'll know that you're there when that Sharpie will start biting. So you can see it still isn't quite hitting there. So we're gonna give it some strokes. I say about 10 per side, meaning I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I check. Doug, now that we have the angle set, you saw the motion that we were doing. I'm sure that it kind of reminds you of some of the previous martial arts.
So that's, from my point of view, what I see here, we have the base, it's like a solid base in your stances in martial arts. Gives you that stability and a point of reference for consistency in how you're going to be setting yourself up.
Yes.
Then we have we have these rods here, so I know that the angles have been set. So we have certain angles that you're doing so that you have that point of view of what function or the way you want your angles done.
Exactly.
Then I saw the motion. The motions you were doing pretty much is like a chain punch or even circular strikes that we're doing in there. Now let's find out how easy is it to accomplish that.
Let's have you jump in on it and give it a try.
All right, so the first thing, we know it's stationary right there. You got the base. You grab from the bottom to have more control of these stones, right?
And a quick safety tip is make sure that your fingers are behind this edge here on the stones to ensure at any point it's going to be covered and protected.
So I saw you doing all these motions right there, right? Now, I can do that because of my colleague training, but I'm a student and this is day one. And I remember even from old classical martial arts, day one was from here, right?
Yes.
One punch at a time. So that's how I'm going to approach this. One stroke at a time.
Here. And run it. Perfect.
We talked about making sure my thumbs are behind that line there for safety. Now, as I'm bringing it in, I'm going to start off here. I'm going to raise it up, just like I said, and then ride it forward as I go forward, right?
Perfect.
And the other side, down.
Beautiful.
Up and down.
Just like that.
Up. Oh, it's actually like, look at this. So what I like about this right now is I'm just feeling the edge as I'm sharpening, but it's also easy. It's not as complicated as I thought. This is something that I can do. So the variable here of pressure is eliminated because I'm just riding the edge.
And not only pressure of that edge, but also the pressure of having to be perfect, maintaining everything.
Yeah.
This does it for you right here.
And then I also know that the angles don't have to be set a certain way because it's done by the machine. I don't have to be perfect in controlling my muscle or controlling the particular stroke if I'm careful in going slow because it's taken care for that. And it's consistent because it's got a solid base. It's not going anywhere. If I were to do this freehand on a stone, I would not be able to do this. If I were to put this on the grinder, I would ruin my knife because I don't know what I'm doing yet. I don't have that muscle memory. So that was easy.
That was pretty easy, right?
Right.
So now to make sure that we're hitting that apex, we're going to take that Sharpie and it's stuck.
There.
It's getting there. Yeah, give it a shot.
Oh, it is biting. Can you make that up? It is biting. Wow, that was just about 10 strokes.
Yeah, I think right towards the tip, we're going to need just a little bit more, just because I saw from the Sharpie, but you're getting right there.
Yeah, and I'd like to go slow in the beginning because once again, now this can also be meditative. I like the feel, the control. I'm actually accomplishing something, folks. Wow, look at me. I'm doing something. I'm not ruining it. So I am gaining, and you know what? The feel of this, folks, I'm getting a little feeling of satisfaction from this. I'm actually feeling that I'm accomplishing something and I'm gaining confidence. I don't hear that little voice in my head that is saying you're doing it wrong and you're going to screw it up. Finally, I'm doing something right.
I've been trying to keep that quiet.
Oh, was I doing it wrong?
No, you're doing great.
Great, thanks. Good teacher right here.
All right, so now that we have the 200 grit, we're going to just double check.
In a lot of things, they say slow is smooth, smooth is fast. When I go slow, I can actually make sure that my motions cover the edge as best as I can, right?
And Doug, we were talking about during our colleague training about really slicing through. One thing I'd like to emphasize here is it's not just a push so much as you are adding a little bit of subtle pressure to really slice down into the edge on an angle, just like we've done on angle 1 and 2 in college.
Now, one of the ways I also notice you doing is that I can just work on just this section if I wanted to, right? I don't need to go all the way. That's already been sharpened. and I need to re-profile just the middle, I can just start from here and get down there, right?
Yeah.
Now, as I'm doing this, I can see how this little work actually is already getting results. But of course, if I get to the level of someone like you can get results quickly.
Yes.
But either way, you're getting results.
Absolutely. Doug, one thing I'll jump in to show is, like you said, once you get that motion down, it becomes a dance. It becomes something where you know that motion is going to be consistent every time. Your mind escapes, and it becomes very therapeutic.
So I can feel the cut as opposed to just copying the motion.
Because that's really what you're doing, is you're removing the material and you are cutting through that steel. So allow it to cut. Don't be afraid to put that pressure and cut through. Perfect.
So now I can see it biting, but also in the same time, it's got a very coarse feel. So
toothy,
I
right?
know that it's toothy, and this is what we call in forging fire. It's got that toothy edge, right? And the toothy edge is, if you look at the microscope section of this, right, you can see all these little things on the edge because you've been cutting the metal around it. You've been removing it.
Yes.
But that can be very grabby when you're cutting. And now what's the next step?
Now that we have that 200, you can feel that it's toothy. We're going to rotate the stones to the 600, which is still removing material. It's going to give you a good working edge, but it's going to refine that edge.
It's going to, polish it, right? And when they polish edge, this means not shiny. It's about removing all the toothy edges. And the reason for that is
better efficiency when slicing, less drag. Now, don't get me wrong, you can absolutely have a good working toothy edge if you're slicing through leather, canvas, things like that. But if you're using this as a chef's knife for food prep work, I recommend a more polished edge for better cutting efficiency.
Yeah. So that's what we talk about in Fortune Fire. We say design it for the test.
Right.
Different materials require different kind of edges, right? So it's important to pay attention to what you're cutting. With a toothy edge, that means that teeth are in there. You want it because it's going to grab onto the material and cut it, right? But if you have materials that are very smooth already, that you don't want it to grab on, you want to slice through, you want a more polished edge. And when you're saying polished, doesn't mean it's shiny. It just means it's smoother to where the edges meets the material.
And I call it refining it, because you're really building that edge, and Wicked Edge gives you a ton of options for stones, attachments, modifications that you can do to your edge, even all the way up to a beautiful mirror polish. So make sure to stay along for this journey, because we're going to teach you how to do all of that.
All of it. So now all I have to do is just flip it around, right? So much easier that way, right? So the same thing, one step at a time. And the motions are exactly the same?
Exactly the same. Still pushing down and cutting all the way through.
So you know what I love about this?
What's that?
I am actually finding that this is very meditative. I mean, my mind is focused on the feel. The feel alone gets me to focus on one thing. I'm not thinking about what's on TV. I'm not thinking about what martial arts I got to do on the side. I'm just feeling this, and for one moment in time, I'm transported to another place. This is very therapeutic.
It is. I call it meditation through movement.
I love that. And we do that in Kali. We do it in martial arts.
Exactly.
I actually get to do it as a sharpening system. That is a big perk for me.
All right, so we just finished with the 600. We're going to pop these off, and now we're going to take it out of the vise.
Now it's time for the moment of truth.
It's time for the
Sharpness test. All right. So earlier, it wasn't cutting as well. Let's find out all that work that I got to do 5 minutes ago.
There it is.
Oh.
So you'll notice that this is a toothier edge to it.
It's a toothier. It grabs.
Wicked Edge also has an additional set of stones that you can get. If you pre-order them, you can get the 800 and 1000 that comes with the pre-order.
More polished edge.
With the more polished edge. But this is what you get with the working edge. Everything you need to get started. Doug, you did that.
It is so satisfying. Earlier, I thought I was going to just get this just because it felt good to work out with it. But I'm seeing an actual accomplishment.
Nice.
Which I don't normally get that feeling right away. Normally, when I start something, it takes months and years to be able to get to this point. This took me minutes. Yeah, I think we're at a stage where all of a sudden you don't need years and years and years of mastery. You can find a shortcut right here that actually allows you to do it for what it is. Wow.
And this was a crash course into the Wicked Edge system. Yeah. This is the start of your journey. I'm excited to share some more insights and teach you how to polish that edge even further.
First class, first try, feels good, folks. Join me in my journey to becoming a knife expert. Join me with that because we're going to cover so many other things that we can go into detail, but that takes time. And this is all about time. In a few minutes of learning and going it through with the right kind of instruction, I was able to accomplish something that I thought I could never do on my own.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys in the next episode, and stay sharp.
Stay sharp.
Slice.
All right, everybody.
Wait,
Class.
one more time. I wasn't looking. All right. Ready? Here we go. This is it.
All right. No.